Most people with small spaces assume serious food production is not an option. They are wrong. The most productive gardens in urban history were not sprawling fields. They were rooftops, window ledges, and courtyards packed with the right plants in the right containers. The difference between a decorative pot and a food-producing one is simply knowing which crops reward the container environment, rather than merely tolerating it. These 20 do not just survive in containers. They thrive in ways their in-ground versions rarely match. Number 20, kale. Kale in a container is a different plant from kale in the ground, and the difference works in your favor. In open soil, kale grows aggressively, producing stems that become woody and difficult to manage within a single season. In a 30-liter container, root restriction slows that vegetative surge without stopping leaf production, keeping the plant at a size that is genuinely manageable while extending the productive leaf harvesting window well beyond what ground-grown plants typically deliver. The cut-and-come-again method transforms a single planting into a continuous harvest. Remove outer leaves at the base, always leaving the central growing tip untouched, and the plant replaces them steadily from the center outward. A single container kale plant, harvested this way, produces through spring, summer, and autumn without replacement. After the first frost, the flavor deepens considerably. Cold converts starches to sugars in the leaves, and a frost-touched kale leaf is noticeably sweeter and less sharp than anything taken from the same plant in August. Kale also tolerates the imperfect watering schedules that busy container gardeners inevitably produce. It wilts under serious drought, but recovers completely once water returns, which is a resilience most container vegetables do not share. The next plant shares that resilience, but produces from an even smaller container, which is where it gets interesting. Number 19, chives. Chives are the closest thing to a permanent zero-effort harvest that container gardening offers. Plant a clump once in a container as small as 15 centimeters across. Cut the entire bunch to 3 centimeters above the soil surface when you need them. Within a week, new shoots push from the base. That cycle repeats across years without replanting, without feeding beyond an annual top dressing of compost, and without any attention between harvests. The purple pom-pom flowers that appear in late spring are fully edible, carrying a milder onion flavor than the leaves. Scattered over soup, eggs, or a bowl of noodles, they are the garnish that restaurants charge for and charge guests to notice. The same garnish is growing in a pot outside your kitchen door. Left through winter, chives die back to bare soil and return in early spring without any assistance, making them one of the few container plants that genuinely asks for nothing across an entire year. If you have not subscribed yet, hit that button right now. Every week, this channel publishes exactly this kind of practical knowledge. The guides that tell you what to grow, how to grow it, and what the mainstream garden market has no interest in telling you for free. The next crop is the one that most people assume containers cannot produce in any meaningful quantity. They are about to be corrected. Number 18, potatoes. A 40-liter fabric grow bag produces 4 to 6 kilograms of potatoes from a footprint smaller than a dining chair. That number surprises most people who have only ever thought of potatoes as a field crop. The fabric bag matters specifically. It breathes in a way solid plastic cannot, preventing the waterlogging that rots tubers and allowing oxygen to reach the root zone through the growing cycle. As roots reach the bag's fabric edges, they stop growing and produce lateral branching that develops additional tubers, a process called air pruning that solid containers cannot replicate. The earthing up method is what maximizes the yield. Start with 15 centimeters of compost in the base. Plant 2 seed potatoes on the surface. When stems reach 20 centimeters, cover all but the top 5 centimeters with more compost. Repeat until the bag is full. Each buried stem section develops its own tubers, compounding the harvest significantly compared to simply planting and waiting. Tip the bag onto a tarpaulin at harvest and run your hands through the warm compost. The potatoes are there, clean and still warm from the sun-heated fabric, and eating them within the hour of harvest is a genuinely different experience from anything a supermarket delivers. Now, for a plant that produces its harvest in a fraction of the time potatoes take, from a container a fraction of the size. Number 17, radishes. 22 days from seed to harvest in warm conditions. Nothing else on this list comes close. In a container 15 centimeters deep, radishes complete their entire life cycle before most vegetables have established. The succession method is what turns a small container into a continuous production unit. Sow a short row every 10 days rather than the entire container at once. The first sowing is ready to pull as the third goes in, and the container never sits idle between harvests. Pulled fresh from the container, rinsed, and eaten immediately. A radish has a crispness and a clean, peppery heat that deteriorates within hours of harvest. The supermarket version, which spent days in refrigerated storage before reaching a shelf, is a fundamentally different texture. Radishes also function as a diagnostic tool. Misshapen or forked roots signal compaction or inconsistent watering in the container mix, flagging problems before slower, more valuable crops go into the same medium. What comes next takes longer, but produces from a container in a way that defies most people's expectations completely. Number 16, cucumbers. Standard cucumber varieties fail in containers because their root systems exceed what most containers can provide. Bush varieties bred specifically for container growing are a different situation entirely. Space Master and Bush Pickle stay compact. Produce full-sized cucumbers from plants reaching 60 to 90 centimeters, and perform best in 40-liter containers with simple vertical support. They fruit continuously in warm conditions, delivering 2 to 3 cucumbers per plant every 5 to 7 days during peak season. Water consistency is the management variable that determines everything. Cucumbers are more than 90% water by composition, and any moisture stress during fruit development produces bitter cucumbers and signals the plant to stop producing. Daily checking of container moisture levels in warm weather is the non-negotiable requirement for productive container cucumbers. A cucumber picked at 20 centimeters and eaten within the hour has a crispness and mild freshness that waxed, refrigerated supermarket cucumbers do not possess at any stage of their shelf life. The next plant is smaller, faster, and produces from one of the shallowest containers on this list. Number 15, lettuce. A container 15 centimeters deep and 50 centimeters wide, planted with mixed loose leaf varieties and managed on a cut-and-come-again schedule, produces the equivalent of 8 to 10 retail bags of salad before it eventually bolts. Cut the entire container to 5 centimeters above the soil surface. New leaves push from the base within a week. That cycle produces 4 to 6 full cuttings per planting, compared to the single harvest a heading variety provides before the space needs clearing and replanting. Heat management extends the season in a way that in-ground growing cannot replicate. Lettuce bolts in response to rising temperatures. A container moved to partial afternoon shade in midsummer delays bolting by 2 to 3 weeks without any other intervention. That flexibility is unavailable to in-ground growers who watch their lettuce run to seed on schedule regardless. Leaves harvested directly into a bowl retain their structure and their crispness in a way that prepackaged leaves, already 24 to 48 hours from harvest, simply do not. The next plant takes more heat, needs more depth, and produces something that tastes like concentrated summer from a container on a south-facing wall. Number 14, cherry tomatoes. Container cherry tomatoes consistently outperform in-ground plants on one specific measure: flavor, consistency. In-ground tomatoes receive whatever rainfall arrives, producing alternating periods of drought and saturation that cause blossom end rot and fruit splitting. A container with daily moisture checking eliminates both problems by maintaining the consistency that prevents them. That moisture consistency also allows fruit to develop its sugar content evenly, rather than surging and stalling with irregular water supply. Sungold, the orange cherry variety, produces clusters of thin-skinned fruit from July through October with a sweetness so concentrated it reads more like a fruit than a vegetable. Eaten straight from the plant, still warm from afternoon sun, it is one of the better experiences a container garden produces. Feed weekly with high-potassium liquid fertilizer from first flowering. Skip 2 consecutive feedings at peak season and the yield drop is noticeable within 10 days. That is the entire management requirement. The next plant demands similar heat, but produces from a container in a way most people have never attempted. Number 13. Peppers. Peppers in containers run longer than peppers in the ground. The reason is movability. When the first frost warning arrives, a pepper plant in a 30-liter container comes inside. It continues producing on a sunny windowsill or in a conservatory for 3 to 4 weeks beyond what any in-ground plant survives. That extension is often the difference between a plant that produced adequately and one that produced generously, because the heaviest pepper harvests typically arrive in the final weeks of a long season. The warm root zone of a dark container on a south-facing surface also gives peppers a head start in spring that in-ground planting cannot match. Soil temperature is the limiting factor for pepper root activity, and a container sitting on sun-heated paving in May is consistently warmer than the surrounding ground. Bite into a ripe container pepper left on the plant until fully colored, and the sweetness is sharper and more concentrated than anything the commercial supply chain delivers, because the fruit was not picked early for shipping resilience. Small space, big flavor. The next plant does the same from a vertical structure that most people walk straight past without considering its potential. Number 12. Climbing beans. A container 40 centimeters wide and 40 centimeters deep, planted with 4 climbing bean plants against a 2-meter bamboo frame, converts unused vertical space into one of the most productive food structures a patio can support. 3 to 5 kilograms of pods across a 10 to 12 week season is not unusual from a well-managed container climbing bean setup harvested every 2 to 3 days at peak production. That frequency is the management requirement that keeps the plant in continuous flowering mode. Leave pods to mature fully, and the plant reads the seed development as reproductive success and slows production. Harvest regularly, and it keeps producing. The vertical structure serves a second function beyond food. A container of climbing beans in full growth creates a living screen that blocks sightlines, buffers wind, and produces a green density on a patio that no ornamental climber matches for combined practical effect. Pick pods when they snap with a clean, sharp sound. That sound is the ripeness indicator no chart provides as accurately. If you have made it this far and have not hit the like button yet, do it now. It takes 1 second, and it tells the algorithm that this kind of information is worth putting in front of more people. The next plant takes up more space, but produces more food per container than almost anything else on this list. Number 11. Zucchini. One zucchini plant in a 60-liter container is one of the most productive food plants it is possible to grow in a confined space. Full stop. The productive window runs from first flowering through to first frost, delivering harvests every 2 to 3 days during peak summer. The management requirement is equally clear. Harvest at 15 to 20 centimeters consistently. Fruit left on the plant beyond that size grows to marrow dimensions within days and signals the plant that seed production is complete, ending or slowing further fruiting almost immediately. Bush varieties bred for container growing, like Patio Star, keep the plant at a manageable size without reducing yield. The leaves are still large. A healthy container zucchini is a substantial plant, but the growth stays directed rather than sprawling across 2 square meters of surrounding ground. The flowers are edible and worth using. Stuff them with soft cheese and pan fry them lightly, and you have something that sells for several dollars each at farmers markets, from a plant growing in a bucket on your patio. Now here is something completely different. A container crop that produces not 1, but 2 harvests from the same plant across the same season. Number 10. Beetroot. Beetroot in a container is 2 crops in one, and most gardeners only ever collect one of them. The leaves are edible from 4 weeks after germination, nutritionally similar to Swiss chard, with an earthy depth and a red pigment that bleeds dramatically into whatever it is cooked with. Harvesting outer leaves progressively, while the root develops below, does not reduce the final root yield. It extends the productive use of the container from 4 weeks after sowing, rather than waiting the full 10 to 12 weeks for roots alone. Round varieties like Detroit and Bolterdy Suit container depths of 30 centimeters. Sow 3 seeds per position, thin to the strongest seedling once germinated, and space positions 10 centimeters apart across the container. Roast a freshly harvested beetroot whole in its skin until a knife slides through without resistance. Then, peel while still warm. The sweetness concentrated by roasting from a freshly grown root is something the vacuum-packed boiled supermarket version does not prepare you for. The next plant produces something even more satisfying from underground, but from a crop that most people assume cannot work in a container at all. Number 9. Dwarf French beans. Bush French beans in a container are among the most efficient protein crops per square centimeter available to a container gardener. First harvest arrives 50 to 60 days after direct sowing in warm conditions. The plants are self-supporting, requiring no staking, no training, and no daily management beyond watering. In a 50 centimeter container with 4 to 6 plants, the concentrated harvest over 3 to 4 weeks delivers 2 to 3 kilograms of pods. The succession container method is what transforms this from a single event into a season of production. Start 3 containers, 2 weeks apart. The first peaks while the second is establishing and the third is germinating. 3 containers cycling this way provide near continuous beans through the warm season without any single glut that outpaces the kitchen. The pods snap with a clean, crisp sound at the right harvest stage. That sound is the quality indicator that no grading system or label communicates as directly. The next plant grows vertically, takes up almost no floor space, and produces from a container that doubles as a living privacy screen. Number 8. Strawberries. Everbearer strawberry varieties in containers produce 3 distinct flushes of fruit from May through September, compared to the single concentrated June harvest of standard varieties. The runner habit that makes strawberries invasive in open beds becomes productive in container growing. Runners emerging from the main plant are redirected into adjacent small pots, each rooting within 3 weeks and becoming a new productive plant. One original plant becomes 5 or 6 by the end of its first season, multiplying the harvest without spending another cent on plants. Position containers at different heights on wall-mounted brackets, railings, and tiered stands to create a vertical strawberry system that produces from a wall rather than a floor, freeing the limited surface area of a small patio for other crops. Strawberries eaten within 20 minutes of picking taste genuinely different from ones that spent 3 days in refrigerated transport. The flavor is warmer, deeper, and closer to what the word strawberry is supposed to mean. The next plant produces from a container that most people would walk past without a second glance at its potential output. Number 7. Spring onions. Spring onions from seed to harvest in 8 weeks. No thinning complications, no pest pressure, no staking, no feeding, and no skill requirement beyond sowing seeds into moist compost and covering them lightly. A container 15 centimeters deep and 40 centimeters wide, sown every 2 weeks from early spring through midsummer, maintains a near continuous supply without any single glut. That succession rhythm is the entire management strategy. Sow regularly, pull progressively, repeat. The regrowth trick extends value further. After pulling, leave a centimeter of white base in the container. A new shoot emerges within 10 to 14 days, smaller than the original, but fully usable in cooking. That is a partial second harvest from a planting already considered complete, from a container that barely takes up any space on a windowsill. That was the smallest harvest container on this list. The next one is bigger, and what it produces from that extra space is significantly more ambitious. Number 6. Swiss chard. Swiss chard in a container produces the highest return per planting of any leafy green in container growing, across a productive window so long that most people who grow it stop noticing it because it never causes a problem worth noticing. A single plant in a 25-liter container, harvested by taking outer leaves and leaving the central growing point, produces continuously from late spring through hard frost. 5 to 6 months of regular harvesting from one planting, without replacement, without significant feeding, and without the pest management pressure that most container vegetables eventually require. The stems and leaves cook differently and carry different textures. Stems need a few extra minutes in the pan and retain a firm bite that the leaf loses almost immediately under heat. Both come from the same harvest, from the same plant, without any additional work. Mixed variety packs produce stems in red, yellow, orange, and white simultaneously. And a container of Swiss chard in full growth looks more like something placed for ornamental effect than something placed for dinner. Something far more dramatic looking is coming up next. But the real story is what it does underground before anything appears above the surface. Number 5. Garlic. Garlic is the most overlooked container crop in small space growing, and the most misunderstood in terms of the full value it delivers. Plant cloves in October or November into a container at least 20 centimeters deep. They grow through winter with almost no visible activity, then accelerate in spring and are ready in June or early July, precisely when the container is needed for warm season crops, making the rotation clean and efficient. Hardneck varieties produce garlic scapes in early summer, the curling green flower stems that emerge before the bulb is ready below. Cut them and use them exactly as you would use garlic in any recipe, with a milder, greener flavor that no dried or stored garlic produces. Removing them also redirects energy back into bulb development. Adjacent containers with peppers, tomatoes, and strawberries show measurably lower aphid pressure when garlic is growing nearby, turning the container into a passive pest management tool that produces a harvest at the end of the season anyway. The next plant also does double duty, but its second function is something most container gardeners have never thought to consider. Number 4. Mint. Mint belongs in a container, not because it is well suited to one, but because the container is the only place it behaves. In open ground, mint travels through underground runners at a speed most gardeners underestimate badly in the first season. By the second, it has colonized the surrounding bed, the path edges, and is investigating the lawn. In a container, that vigor produces a dense, productive plant that fills the pot and provides continuous harvest without threatening anything nearby. Pick from the stem tips regularly, and the plant branches more densely with each harvest. Allow it to flower, and the leaves become less palatable immediately, as the plant directs energy from leaf production into seed. Pinch out every flower stem as it appears, and the harvest window extends by several weeks. Rub a fresh mint leaf between your fingers and hold it close. The oils release immediately, sharp and intensely cool. The gap between that and dried mint from a jar is one of the larger flavor differences in home cooking, resolved entirely by a single pot on a windowsill. The plant coming up next produces an equally dramatic flavor gap between fresh and commercial, from a container that takes up almost no space at all. Number 3. Basil. Basil is simultaneously the most purchased and most quickly killed herb in container growing, and the reason is almost always identical: overwatering in a container without adequate drainage. In a dedicated small container with free draining compost and full sun, basil behaves differently from the supermarket pot that collapses within 2 weeks of arriving home. The supermarket version is multiple seedlings crammed into a small pot, grown fast under artificial light for shelf life rather than longevity. One seedling transplanted into its own container with proper drainage is a different proposition entirely. Pinch out the growing tip before any flower buds form, the moment the plant reaches 15 centimeters. This redirects energy from seed production into leaf production and delays bolting by several weeks. Do it consistently whenever a flower stem begins to appear and the plant continues producing through summer. Tear a fresh leaf and hold it close before using it. The scent is immediate, warm, sweet, and complex in a way that the bruised, oxidized leaves in a plastic bag from a refrigerated shelf do not resemble at any meaningful level. Now, for the 2 entries that change how the whole list should be used. Number 2. Herbs as a system. The most productive container in any small space garden is not a single crop. It is a container divided between several herbs, managed together as a continuous harvest system. A 50-centimeter container planted with basil, flat-leaf parsley, chives, and coriander, each section harvested on a rotating cut-and-come-again schedule, produces something usable every day of the growing season. Not in theory, in practice, because one section is always at the right stage, while the others are recovering from the previous cut. The economic argument for this container is straightforward. Fresh herb bunches at retail cost between $1 and $3 each. A household using fresh herbs 4 times a week through a 20-week productive season, spends $80 to $240 on something a single 50-centimeter container replaces entirely, from a one-time investment in compost and a few seed packets. The basil in this system deserves a specific note. It bruises easily, which is why supermarket basil is almost always slightly brown at the cut edges by the time it reaches a kitchen. Harvested directly into a dish from a container outside the door, the leaves are intact, vivid, and aromatic in a way pre-packed basil never achieves, regardless of how recently it was packed. Number 1. The system behind the containers. Here's what every entry on this list has been building toward. Every crop on this list produces more in a container under one condition that in-ground growing rarely provides consistently: control. Container growing creates a daily relationship with each plant that open bed gardening does not require and does not reward in the same immediate way. You know when the compost is dry because the container feels light when you lift it. You know when the plant is stressed because it is close enough to examine every morning. You know when to harvest because the container is within reach of the kitchen door. That proximity is the productivity driver, not the container itself. The second element is rotation speed. A container emptied after one crop is ready for the next within hours. The bag that grew garlic through winter grows zucchini through summer and grows salad through autumn. 3 productive cycles from a single container across 12 months. An in-ground bed cleared after harvest needs weathering, amendment, and time before the next crop goes in. The third element is microclimate management. Move the pepper into more sun. Bring the basil inside before frost. Shift the lettuce to afternoon shade in July to extend the harvest. These are routine decisions in container growing and impossible ones in the ground. Plant these 20 in sequence in the right containers with the daily attention containers reward, and the result is not a collection of pots producing occasional harvests. It is a continuous, rotating food system that produces something edible on most days of the growing year from a space most people currently leave empty. The containers were always capable of this. The only question was whether you knew what to put in them. Thanks for watching. If this list changed how you think about your small space, tell us in the comments which crop you are starting with this season. And click the next video on the left, because what we cover there about no-dig growing systems takes everything on this list and makes it work harder than you thought possible.